Welcome to Leapcast. I'm your host, Dr. George James. Leap stands for leaders, entertainers, athletes, and performers. And I'm on a journey to connect with high achievers and highlight their unexamined human moments. Tune in to learn how these high-achieving Leap individuals were able to reach their greatest potential, face their most difficult challenges, and embrace the human moments that helped them along the way. If you want to get the episode highlights directly in your email, then head to theleapcast.com right now to subscribe. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Dr. George James, and welcome to Leapcast, where we talk to leaders, entertainers, athletes, and performers. I'm excited. You know, I'm always bringing amazing, wonderful people. I'm so thankful to have great friends and people I've met along the way. And today is just another one of my awesome friends that I get to hang out with for a little bit. Keren Eldad has been a master coach, has worked with billion-dollar companies, has influenced people, helped people make changes from celebrities to athletes. But she's just a great, amazing human being. She brings such amazing energy and positivity to whatever she brings. And we were fortunate to meet each other on the set of the Today Show. And we've stayed in touch, which doesn't always happen. So welcome, Keren. Thanks for being with me today. How are you doing today so far?
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. James. I was just coming to you before. I'm in a very good mood. You know, I'm always in a good mood, but today I'm in a very, very good mood.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. So we like to start off by asking what is your leap story, and what that means is kind of just telling us a little bit about like your early beginnings, maybe growing up, home life, or what set you on this path to do what you do, and then we're going to get into a little bit more of that. But share a little bit of your early story, if you don't mind, your leap story.
My leap story has nothing to do with my original story. I was an adorable child in an adorable household. It was the middle class wonderland of the 80s, a time we now reminisce about with great fondness.
Yes.
Nothing special or extraordinary I think about that, other than my favorite animal was koala bears. Many,
Nice.
many years later, after doing everything quote unquote right and finding myself like so many, especially women, I think, in society today, but so many people entering the midlife crisis, I felt purposeless and aimless and started to ask a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds, especially post COVID, which is seriously, this is it?
Yeah.
How the heck did I end up here? And that was the leap moment for me, because after much rumination and getting really sick of ruminating and whining and complaining, which is just not anybody's nature. It's not really about how I'm wired. It's not anybody's nature. I got sick of my own excuses and of accepting the status quo that was just not for me. I braced myself. I took really big steps that I had never considered before, like starting to work with therapists and coaches and reading self-help books, which I had, of course, been allergic to all my life because I was a giant snob, and admitted to myself that I hadn't obviously done everything right if I ended up in a position where I was dissatisfied with most of my life. And through those inspired actions, ultimately discovered what my purpose was, which was to do something that actually uplifted people and helped people rather than what I was doing before, which was a marketing job. So here we are years later after a complete transformation. And that's really, I leapt out of necessity, out of reaching the summit of a mountain, looking down, thinking, you've got to be kidding me, and
Mm.
jumping.
You're right. There's so many people who are experiencing that, like today, like
Yeah.
this very moment. Like, why, as you mentioned, or is this it? But I'm really curious about that moment for you, because so many people are in that place right now. What allowed you to evaluate where you were, and then what allowed you to say, I don't want to be here anymore?
Well, can I say a bad word on your podcast?
You go. You can say whatever you want.
It was a shitstorm. What really was the conduit was a shitstorm. I started to realize and recognize something I had been really not interested in doing, because it would mean admitting failure and going through something very difficult, which was that my marriage was awful.
Mm.
And not only was my marriage awful, unsalvageable, as in I was in an abusive relationship. There's nothing you can do from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to dissolve the marriage. And when I started to go through a really harrowing divorce and losing so much anyway, I was able to therefore just loosen my grip on the other stuff that honestly wasn't really working for me either. A career that was really nice and safe, but certainly wasn't lighting my soul on fire. And I don't think that anybody deserves anything less than that. That was just not a belief I've ever held. So I wanted to turn that around. I let go of a lot of other stuff too because I was 35 at the time, and a lot of things start changing when you're 35, including your physicality.
Yeah.
So it really allowed me to explore almost every relationship I had with myself, with my achievements, and with what I was doing with my life. And starting to lose everything, which, by the way, I also went through a fire where I lost all my stuff.
Oh,
I lost my job because
yeah.
in a divorce, sometimes God throws you an extra bone.
Yeah.
And I went through 5 months of homelessness and of joblessness. And essentially, in that enormous grinding halt moment, I asked all the questions. So I got lucky. I was served trauma. For those who are not lucky and don't encounter a shitstorm, just ask yourself, is this resonating with you? You don't need to go through trauma to start asking the big questions of life. You just need to accept that you are, in the words of Adam Grant, our good friend, languishing, and
Yes.
just not be cool with that.
Yeah. I appreciate you so much for sharing that, because there are times where like it could feel like it's all like just going the wrong way, not the game plan we dreamt up, and then like you said, we get thrown some extra bones on top of that, and we can sometimes want to hold on to control and or think that we have control. And it sounds like you were able, one of these things, that this talk coaching program that I have is called I Give Myself Permission. And it
Mhm.
sounds like you were able to give yourself permission to say, let me release whatever control I have, let me ask myself these hard questions, and let me be willing to go where it needs to go. And so this is so great that you were able to do that. And and when you started to recognize this is not the life you wanted anymore, I would imagine that was probably scary.
Terrifying. And I see it in my clients today. What you're talking about is like in that spiral, in the loss of control, everybody starts clinging to anything that looks solid. It's normal, it's a natural reflex. I mean, I actually remember going through the divorce and having weird thoughts like maybe I shouldn't get divorced. That,
Yeah.
which was a ridiculous thought.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a terrifying relationship. I literally mean I was afraid for my life
Yeah.
many times. So it's very hard for us to let go of what looks familiar and looks safe, but you have to give yourself that permission. You have to trust your hunch that you are onto something and that there is a reason your soul is calling out for freedom and for clarity. And if you have that audacity to follow that rabbit down the hole, you will very likely end up in Wonderland. That's a promise.
Yeah. And I don't want to even glance over what you're saying, because it is so powerful. And I just want to give a shout out to all the people out there who are in abusive relationships and trying to figure it out, those who have been able to navigate their way out, because from the outside people feel like they have all the right answers, and we don't have the right answers. The people who are in it know more about what their situation is, what they can do or can't do. When you're terrified about your partner and what that person can do to you, you have to figure out when is the right time and when is the right move. And it sounds like you were able to do that, and I give you a lot of credit for that, because it's not easy. And like you said, lots of times we do want to, we say, well, maybe I should stay, maybe it's not that bad, even though I'm totally terrified and I don't know what else to do.
Exactly. The reason I started becoming open with my story was not only because I now experience emotional detachment. It's another lifetime for me. Is also because I started to realize how many people were nodding along and
Yeah.
recognized themselves in this. This is a 1 in 4 occurrence for women, and this is not unfamiliar territory for men either, because
Exactly.
emotional abuse is a thing too.
Hmm.
And that is it's just an important thing to say. Exactly what you're saying, Dr. James, was I don't have all the answers and I don't know the particularities of your relationship, but I do know what it's like. And I also know that by exemplifying a person who knew when enough is enough and
Yeah.
took inspired action and got out the other side, I'm already doing my part as much as I can really to help.
Yeah. And that is significant. And Once again, in this talk I do, right, and programs, lots of times people don't recognize that we maybe it's an abusive relationship, maybe it's a bad job, maybe it's just doing what everybody has said you should do. We say like there's no other option, and or this is it, or this is the best that I can do. We don't really give ourselves permission to go beyond that. And but you didn't do that. You didn't settle. You didn't let that be. And even when everything was going all the different ways that you didn't might not have wanted, how did you get to that place? How did you say like, this is now my new North Star? What was that like for you?
When you go through a coaching process, or really any more aggressive forms of therapy like CBT, you really are uncovering essentially the ego to the point where you remember who you are. And that's actually where, Dr. James, I did have to go back in time to that childhood in the 80s. And I remembered a little girl who knew she was special, who had the audacity to think that she was special. You then spend 20 years of your life essentially conditioned way out of that. You're not special. There's nothing special about you. Stop thinking you're special, stay in place.
Yeah.
But I remember really coming back to that I can and I will state.
Yes.
And that's where coaching brought me. And that's essentially what I try to do for almost everybody who's out there and seeking coaching. Believe it or not, celebrities and athletes, as you know, are not immune. They also are taught in many ways to stay in line. And it's really important to teach you to hone in on that part of you that always knew how spectacular you are, and to allow you to honor that promise to yourself, at least from one perspective, which I actually think is the best thing about the midlife crisis, which is you're going to die.
Yeah.
And if you start to understand that you're going to die, we have finite time here, then you might as well see your desires and the promises in your heart through. That's what happened to me, and that's what I hope is happening to everybody else.
It's so important, right? This facing our mortality is so hard and overwhelming and challenging. But yet, at the same time, what you're saying is if we can acknowledge our mortality, acknowledge the finite time, then we can start to say, how do you want to live that time? How do you want to live on purpose? Do you want to live a fulfilled life? Do you want to be an exceptional person that you are, but really own it? And I love this thought of, what you're sharing. Like, we get so used to being in line. And, in particular, I think this happens across the board, but when we have certain identities, I think it shows up even more. I think this shows up a lot for women. I think for people of color, people,
Yeah,
same sex, LGBTQ. Like, I think like there are ways that folks are told to be in certain places depending on your identity. And I'm curious if you've seen that, particular for women. I'm wondering if you've seen that in your experience and even in your work.
absolutely. The thing is, we are going to die, so there's no big deal here. Like, there's no reason to use this as a morbid thought. It's not a morbid thought, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
Like taxes, you will die.
Yeah.
And um, if you start to understand that, the ego starts to subside. The ego controls, I think, are much more particular in the cases of minorities and of women. And of course, the reason I say that is research. Just look at the numbers for the recurrence, for example, of imposter syndrome, of worrying about what you will look like when you take any steps
Yeah.
towards a life that is more visible, a career that is more visible, and just the impact on minorities and on women, and on really anybody who's been told to live a certain way and has learned certain degrees of helplessness along the way, is going to start projecting that onwards. So it really does take a degree of audacity. And one of the shortcuts I've found is to say, you're going to die. You might as well
Yes.
drop the ego right now. Stop it. Don't be afraid. You're still here.
I love that. Sometimes really allowing people to face the truth, the facts, taxes, death is there. And, Karen, one of the things I really appreciate about you is not only your enthusiasm and your positivity, but you're a hard worker, right? I've met coaches along the way, some amazing coaches who are doing great and brilliant work. And then I've met some people who just woke up today and say I'm going to be a coach,
Yeah.
and look, I give them credit for their ambition and their drive and willingness to do that. I am a little biased where I feel like you should put a little bit more work into it than that. And I know you've put a lot of work into where you are right now. And what was that like for you to not only have knowledge and information already inside you, but then to do more work to build your business and your craft? Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, there's two parts to that, and I really appreciate you calling that out, doctor. And there's a reason why I also enjoy calling you doctor. And that is accreditation matters enormously. All provenance matters to me enormously because I believe the earned life is the only good life. And the reason for that is another form of obligation, but a form of obligation that I readily accept into my life. And that is the obligation to serve. And when you understand that you are serving others and that you are essentially responsible to them and for them, you take this very seriously to not undergo the hurdle that I think is quite minimal, frankly. I have two master's degrees. Like coaching accreditation is nothing compared to that. When you, as a new coach, and this is still a Wild West industry where people do not take the time to become properly certified by the International Coaching Federation, which is our only gold standard
Mm.
ethical federation for accreditation, then I really don't understand what's going on here. It's so simple, it's so minimal, and it essentially ties you to a body of ethics and to ethical repercussions if you breach, for example, confidentiality, which is a very, very basic responsibility to in the client shared responsibility. I just don't get that.
Yeah.
That ethos. The second part is the hardworking gene. Um, I do wonder about that because I am a very hard worker. And like Brene Brown, I kind of wonder if there's still something I should work on there where I should
Look,
relax
I
a
totally
little
get
more.
it. I
You
totally
know,
get it.
but at the same time, it's really working for me. I adore what I do. It's not exhausting at this stage. I certainly don't experience the burnout and the stasis I experienced in my former life. And when I started to really go about building this business brick by brick, program by program, creating the programs, writing them, recording them, making sure they're foolproof, testing them first on my first circle of friends and then on clients, and then releasing the next launch, really taking care to hone my craft, to get all the proper accreditations from schools that I admire, to additionally expand as a coach and as a practitioner. That's something that's ongoing for me, and it's just a dedication to a métier that still fills me with joy. I
Mhm.
promise you, when I start to become exhausted, I will take this very seriously and I will learn to chill out a bit more.
Well, once again, why I appreciate that. Like I also understand hard work and have been a part of that, and I'm always thinking of something else or coming up with something else, and I can appreciate that in other people, and it just tells me the way that you work with people is the way that you've also gone about your work in the field, right? Like that you're going to work hard with others. You're going to work hard to help them to make whatever transformation they need to make. So I'm curious about like there are coaches who do lots of different things. They specialize in certain areas or certain perspectives. What would you say is the thing that you bring to the table, focus on, or even the types of people you attract in your work?
Well, technically, I'm an executive coach, and I mostly work with people to hone their leadership skills and become a lot less of an asshole. That's essentially the goal of executive coaching: communicate better, understand how people perceive you, work with that and not against that, and create cultures that scale companies and that scale your dreams. But it's a Trojan horse. What
Yeah.
I really want to talk to people about is a midlife crisis, where
Nice.
essentially you're beginning to face all of the accoutrements that you've created that are simply not, they're blocking you from maximum happiness. What you really want isn't scaling your company, isn't getting to the next level career wise. It's clarity and ease and joy. And that has to become the supreme desire. So that's sort of it. I'm always interested in anybody who gets to the summit of a mountain. And really, the real question is this all there is?
Yeah.
And am
Yeah.
I really asking for just more of that? And when you're brave enough to start saying, I want to ask deeper questions around here, you're going to go on a journey like no other.
I think that is so significant. Obviously in my work and in your work, we hear parts of people's lives and experiences that sometimes the general public just doesn't hear.
Yeah.
You see a celebrity, you see an athlete, you see an executive, and you might think that she or he has it all together. But we hear their true stories, their true worries, the things that make them unfulfilled. And I guess I'm wondering for you, like, what brings you joy in this work? What you said that you are still fulfilled. What fills you in doing this work?
It's like the moment where it clicks and you can see it click for somebody. When they come back to the table and realize what just happened. It's usually not something that is expressed fully in words. It's usually expressed in tears.
Hmm.
It's deep gratitude, and you can feel it. You can see that they're out of purgatory. They're out of that seventh circle of hell of doing the same thing over and over and over, and they just get it. They've let go. And once you've let go, you just start to float. It's a very, very nice condition. There's so much beauty in that moment. It's also the moment where I know that it's time to say goodbye.
Yeah, 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 and which is good, right? That you have recognized that part of my work is also to let you go. For you to continue the journey on your own. And so with all like how I'm really curious about how you not only have developed this, but what would you say are the your goals? Like what are the things that you are hoping to accomplish in your work, if you even have those?
As you said that, I heard Michael Jackson in my head. Please set aside his personal life. Heal the world, make it a better place
Right.
for you and for me. I mean, I don't profess to heal the world. I feel much more like Mother Teresa. If you really want to heal the world, begin with your family,
Yeah.
the people who surround you. But ultimately, I believe that the more people who are uplifted, the better off humanity is. And the people you and I coach have very significant wakes. And when you really help them, you actually are making an enormous impact that trickles down over lots and lots of people. For example, a key executive at Nike is essentially responsible for 200 people. Or larger.
Yeah.
And um, but that's not nothing. So ultimately, I really want people to feel very, very good and very happy. People who are very good and very happy are less likely to be violent, are less likely to inspire violence in others, are less likely to create a wake that is detrimental to their own houses, their own families. That's all. That's the only goal of the work.
I truly believe that as well, right? This thought of like as we are in the process of helping people to be their better selves, maybe even heal, that there is a way that impacts the people that they're connected to.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people are often asking me is about how do I balance all of that while still focusing on my own development. And I know that you do it, but I'm wondering like what do you do while you are dealing with the executives, the athletes, the celebrities that also helps you in your own development?
Well, I learned this as a suicide counselor. You may remember that I started as a volunteer suicide counselor when I was feeling aimless and just wanted to do something a little different with my life. And I started volunteering with Crisis Text Line, and I'm still associated with them to this day. And I learned something. You can never show up on the line in a bad mood.
Hmm.
You're not going to be able to help anybody.
Yeah.
You've got to fill yourself first and make sure that you're feeling very well first. So, really, I start my day feeling well. I'm truly committed to spiritual gym. I never err from it. And uh, if I'm a little bit off, I will cancel my appointments. That has yet to happen, but I promise you I will. For example, when my mother received her cancer diagnosis a couple of years ago, I actually do remember in one instance saying, I can't coach you today until you collect yourself and you really make sure that your dedication is to your optimal vibe. This
Yeah.
isn't so much about developing my skills as a coach or anything like that. It's just about minding my vibe and not showing up to a table when I am not fully charged, because you can never get so sick or so upset that you heal those who are sick or upset. And let me also be clear about something. I don't think we heal anybody. I think that our job is to wake you up. That's our real job. Our job is to remind you that you're phenomenal and
Yes.
you are deviating from that right now. So come back. That's the job of the teacher.
No, I appreciate all of that in terms of, what do we do to really invest in ourselves? It's something that's really important to me. um, you know, Taking breaks. I
Yeah.
realize, I said to folks, like, if you want the best therapist that you're going to get ever, get me the day after my vacation,
Yeah.
right? After I am fully recharged, because I know that that allows me to just, be in a different way. And I love how you are committed to that. And the truth is that life still goes on, right? Like, we have things in our own lives. I remember caring deeply for my parents as they were ill, as I hear like your own story, right? And these things that we do while still on the job, and then this thought of like waking people up, because we can be in a trance, right? We can be hypnotized to the grind and the day in and the day out. And I love that that's something that you have been able to do and to cultivate.
Languishing begs for a voice next to you going, "What are you doing? You're
Yeah,
still here."
yeah,
There's no reason to languish unless you're exhausted and you need the break, which I'm totally down with. Languishing in a general long
yeah,
sense, as Adam Grant defined it, is just up, up, up and at 'em. And again, this also is one of the things that makes coaching not for everyone. It is a more intense,
yes it
much more
is.
didactic form of guidance. It's if it's for you, that's awesome. If it's not for you, that's awesome too.
And I guess that also makes me curious because I think I agree that, and that's also why I have deep respect for coaches, which I didn't necessarily always have when I first started in the field, but being exposed and being around and connected to coaches along the way, I have deep respect for them, because it's not something that everybody can do. As many people as they think they can, it's not for everybody. And there are certain parts of a personality and approach that also, I think, sometimes really align people, to be a good fit. And I guess for you, what would you say is those parts of your personality, parts of you that has made it a good fit for you?
So I think most people who want to become coaches, and I'm making a general statement, but also because I'm quite passionate about this, really want to become an influencer. They want to become a famous person. They see people who are quite visible, especially on Instagram, and this seems like an easy career. The same way that a real estate seems like an easy career. The
Right.
threshold, the barriers to entry are low, and the limits of the what you
Yeah.
can earn are enormous. But very few people actually become, that gentleman who's on the TV show
Yeah.
real estate successful. And it's exactly the same with coaching. I think what makes me a great coach is I'm a good teacher. That's what you really need to understand. You are becoming a good teacher, a phenomenal teacher of a system for thinking that unless you understand intimately and know on your flesh, exemplified with your life, is going to be very hard for you to teach. I don't think anybody can teach self love or self compassion if they haven't gone through the entire gamut that Brene Brown is demonstrating. You
Yeah.
cannot learn this intellectually and spew it out. It's very inauthentic, it rings inauthentic, and when the chips are down and somebody really needs you to clarify where they've gone wrong, you won't be able to catch it because you yourself have not gone through the journey. So in that sense, a teacher who really understands what they're doing and really understands the process themselves and has gone through the gamut is invaluable, and that's what you're looking for in a coach, is my 2 cents. Yeah, I don't think anybody is fully doing that. There are coaches who are phenomenal. Marshall Goldsmith is an incredible teacher, a master.
Mm.
How many Marshall Goldsmiths are there? And when people are looking for a coach, be very discerning. You are looking for Dante's Virgil, settle for nothing less.
Yeah. And I think with that same thing of, recognizing that you are languishing, that you are in a stuck place, you are in a trance, and you need someone that is really going to get you out. Like, put, not necessarily put you on their back, but right there with you, digging through, finding a way out, and that you're going to get to the top out and find yourself in a new place. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody's willing to go there with you. Not everybody's well equipped. Not everybody has the tools to help you. And I totally hear that, and I like that you said that. I am curious. I saw that you, also say in your bio that you were an Israeli soldier. I'm I've met some. I know some military folks, U.S. military, Marines, all different branches. I'm curious about that part of your life and how has that added to the work you do now?
So it's not unusual. It is obligatory service in Israel. I was a soldier for 2 years. Most men serve for 3 years, so I got off easy. But there's the same attachment I have for the Israeli military that I have for what I've created in my coaching career, which is a dedication to service. I
Mhm.
believe that in Israel, it is shameful not to serve your country. If you are shunning an obligation that everybody else is fully willing to go through, it is shameful not to serve. So to step up and to serve with your life is a privilege and an honor. And
Yeah.
that's how I feel about coaching as well. You said get in the trenches. That's sort of it. I'm not here to take your money and just enjoy my life and then tell people how awesome it is that I get to work with you. I am there to roll up my sleeves and to serve. That's what my life's mission has been, and that's, I think, the parallel that's echoed through my military service and to this day.
And the reason why I wanted to highlight that is I have deep respect for service women and servicemen, people who give their lives and time and energy in service to their country. And it's not something that I was able to do or did, but family and friends and people I know who have been committed to saying I served, and that just shows up in other parts of your life, and to know that you did that, I know it shows up in your work and what you do. So I often really ask, some questions as we get to the end. Uh, One is, what are you working on now? What are some things that you would like to share with us about what you're doing, or what's in your, in your full array of services? Like, share with us, please.
Well, there's one very exciting things and two things that I do normally. First is I'm a private coach. I work one on one with people, with individuals. That's 30% of my day and my business. The other 30% is professional speaking. So I travel the country like you and serve teams with inspirational talks and with team or group coaching sessions. But what I'm really excited about is my first book, which will come out next year. It's called
Nice.
42 From Midlife Crisis to Midlife Awakening. We're rebranding midlife, and it's a sort of an epic tome that houses everything I've learned up until this point. The title may change, but that's what I'm so, so excited about because it's so creative and so different, you know?
I love it, and congratulations on that. I've been in that journey myself, and I look forward to your book coming out. And obviously, would love to have the follow up conversation about what you want to share from the book. So, congrats on that, and
Same,
all the amazing work that you've been doing.
same to you. I can't wait for your book, Dr. James.
Thank you. I tell people I've been in a group book project before. I'm now working on my solo project, so that is yet to come. So, some other things, you've worked with companies, amazing people along the way. If you could work with anybody, who would you want to work with? Now, that could be either maybe someone that you coach or somebody that you partner with in some type of
Yeah.
venture.
Well, there are people that I absolutely admire and would love to work with. The first is Madonna. She's been the love of my life since I was 8 years old.
A lot of
I,
people would say that.
yes, I absolutely adore her, and I'd love it if we could work together because I really think I have a deep understanding of her, and especially am interested in where she is right now. The second person I absolutely admire and adore is Yuval Noah Harari, the historian, the Israeli historian. He happens to be gay, which is, I think, the only reason why we're not married. But I would definitely love to think with him and to see what he's creating in his life and to see if I could ever be of service to him. Those are pretty much the epitome of my aspirations. We'll see where the cookie crumbles. But in general, I am deeply honored and always passionate to serve anyone from any walk of life who has an interesting story and who is worried that this is it.
Yeah.
It's my job to say no, it's nowhere near it. And wherever they are, it's going to be a fascinating co-creative process.
I love it, the work that you're doing and the people that you mentioned, and really just helping people in this area of what, midlife crisis and how that expands in so many different ways. Last two questions I ask is, uh, how would you define mental wellness?
Ease. It is a near constant state of ease. It's eagerness for what's coming, but also satisfaction with what is. These are really important distinctions because mental unwellness is usually about catastrophizing, projection into the future, or rumination, really digging in the weeds of what was. Ease is a mental point of clarity in the here and now that's
Yeah,
just okay.
yeah.
That's what mental wellness is for me.
No, I love that. Ease is easy to say,
Yeah,
hard to come by, and but when you find it and you find your way to be there and to live there, priceless.
that's
So I love
wonderful.
that.
It's paradise on earth.
What mental wellness advice would you give to your younger self? And this could be as easy as early as yesterday or sometime way in the past.
Take it seriously and invest in it. I thought it was woo woo nonsense for weak people. I could not have been more wrong. Take it easy and invest in this. This is the only thing that matters.
Well, Keren, you offer such profound, information and thoughts and perspective, and I love the work that you do. I love the passion that you bring to your work. I'm excited about your upcoming book, and I know that the people that you work with, the places you go and speak, you leave them better than they were when they first got connected to you, and that's been our experience. Even from the Today Show, the passion and enthusiasm that you brought, our ability to connect and to stay connected, and how even most recently when I was able to join you on your coaches over coffee or
Put it on Zoom getting coffee, the web series.
that's
Yeah.
right. I'm so grateful to be a part of that, even though you had to hunt me down a bit, and I'm grateful that you were able to join me. And this way of building people up or supporting people on their journey, and I resonate that with that so much because of what I'm trying to do in helping folks and what I hear you do. So before we end, is there any last words that you want to share before we wrap?
Yeah. I want to say thank you to you. I feel the same way about you. We're in this together, and this is only the beginning, my friend.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see our act two.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more that we talk, I believe that there's some work for us to do together. There are
Yeah.
some ways that we can support each other more. And I'm looking forward to that. To me, that's one of the great parts of like just doing this is like I have amazing, wonderful, dope friends doing great things across the country, across the world. And I believe that there's some collaboration, or if not, just support that we can have together. So I'm looking forward to that.
It's all happening. It's all happening.
Great. Wow, what an incredible ride we just went on with another great member of the Leapcast community. I appreciate you listening and hope you got some tangible value from the episode. Please let us know what you think by leaving a comment, rating, and review. As always, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is Dr. George James, and I'll see you next time.